Valencia, second largest port on the Mediterranean. Located 300 kilometers east of Madrid and 300 kilometers south of Barcelona, it boasts one of the most fertile soils in Europe. Life here revolves around agriculture and food.
I think for the perfect meal, you could have fresh vegetables from here, fish from the ocean, a glass of wine, surely. Now, what's missing?
Inspiring modern masterpieces, like the works of famous Valenciano architect Santiago Calatrava, coexist with beautiful historical buildings dating back to the city's Moorish past.
We have this curious situation where Christian buildings are actually being built by Muslim builders and craftsmen.
At Valencia's heart is the Garden of the Turia, a land-filled river now converted into a phenomenal park.
It's a very democratic idea. The river is crossing the whole city. Doesn't matter where you live, you have your part of garden.
Add to that a subtropical climate with an average annual temperature of 23 degrees, and you can see why Valencianos are hesitant to share their little piece of heaven with the rest of us. Evolving in the shadow of the magnificent Madrid and the uber-cool Barcelona, Valencia has long been regarded as Spain's neglected city.
Valencia is a port city, but it wasn't founded on the sea.
No, it was founded far away from the sea, like 3 kilometers, because it was founded by the Romans, and the Romans found that it was more convenient to found the city inland because the sea doesn't have any natural protection, like rocky cliffs or anything like that. There are some which is very flat, so it was not easy to be protected if you found the city next to the sea. So that's why they founded the city inside. It was founded on an island of the river, surrounded by water. So they have sweet water, and at the same time, they were having protection.
Home to the Republicans during the Spanish Civil War of the late 1930s, Valencia became the capital of Spain for about a year. But when Francisco Franco took over as dictator, he decided to abandon Valencia, leaving it with little resources.
So many buildings were, for years and years, for decades, they were like this one here. But some others, they've been restored, like these ones here or here. And the people who had money and they could restore the buildings, they did some ugly buildings. In those times, there were not any legislation that said you have to do it this way or not. So you can see a big mix of everything. See the difference between the different buildings and like the buildings with the scaffolding, the ones that are under construction, the ones that have been already finished, and the ones that they need to be restored and everything.
With the city being neglected for so long, did the construction of all these modern buildings spark an interest to renovate more dilapidated areas?
Well, the city started to grow in the 60s, and it's when it arrived to the sea. And the port and the district that were near the sea, that was just fishing villages, became part of the city. And they built a lot of areas with cheap housing for those people that were coming from the country to live in Valencia. And now when people think about Valencia, always thinks about a city on the sea. In the last 15 years, the government of the regional government has been doing a lot of efforts everywhere to renovate this city. And the fact is that Valencia has become a modern city now, renovated, and where people come to Valencia, they are so surprised to see this city.
Although Valencia was built on the bank of the Turia River, its relationship with this waterway has been a troubled one. Because of constant flooding, the river was diverted and dried up, changing the face of the city.
In 1957, there was a very big flood. The water of the river went out from the river and arrived to the first floor of the buildings. So it was a period in which Valencia was quite a poor city, and it was quite abandoned, and when people didn't have enough money to restore the buildings. So they have to abandon this building, and many people went away.
The flood-damaged facades of the old city have long hindered its redevelopment. At one point, the locals even had to walk in the middle of the narrow streets of the old city to dodge pieces of falling concrete.
When did the government decide to drain out the Turia River?
Well, that was just right after the big flood. They decided to divert the river and create a new canal going to the south of the city. It goes like 4 kilometers to the south. And then they started the works in 1962. And the old canal of the river remained empty for many years because Franco wanted to do a highway. And the people in the city, they didn't want to have a highway, and then they wanted to have a garden. It's the green area of the city. It's fantastic. This is like 9 kilometers of green areas, parks and gardens, and children's playgrounds, sport facilities. And it's great because if you take a bike, you can cross the whole city in half an hour. You cross the city from west to east. You have no traffic, no red lights, no cars. And I always love to say that it's a very democratic idea because the river is crossing the whole city. It doesn't matter where you live, in a rich area or in a poor area, you have your part of garden. It's great and it's unique. It's something that you cannot find in any other city in Europe.
This is where the City of Arts and Sciences starts.
Yeah, here in these gardens, because these gardens are part of the Turia Garden, but are already the City of Arts and Sciences gardens, yes. With all these canals, the water, the rose gardens, and all that. This is where it starts, this complex. Something that really shocked me or impressed is that I've never seen a graffiti. So it means that even the young people respect that place, and everybody loves the City of Arts and Sciences.
So we are now in Cabañal.
Yes.
And now they are making a plan to perhaps make a road going to the sea.
Not everything, but the central area of it, they wanted to destroy to open this avenue. So there is a big fight between the town hall of Valencia and the people living here that they don't want the district to be destroyed, and because there are houses of generations and generations living here.
To build this road, the city would have to destroy 1,600 homes. But the occupants took a stand and demanded the restoration of the neighborhood to preserve the city's heritage.
Some people agree with the idea of losing their apartments, but they want to get enough money to buy another apartment somewhere else.
So they have signs on the houses.
Yeah, people
what does
have
it say?
signs. They said, like this one here, for instance, is they say rehabilitación sense destrucción, and it says rehabilitation and restoration with no destruction. So they're against the destruction of the district, and they want it to be restored. That's the idea.
It's definitely a very charming neighborhood.
Yeah, because the people living in this district at the beginning of the 20th century, they were working for the big architects. So they learned how to work on the ceramic, on the wood, on the iron, and they did that kind of modernist or Art Nouveau style in their houses later, when it was already old-fashioned. This is like an old-fashioned, popular, modernist style, and it's so unique. You cannot find any other place. It's very special.
It really seems like a village here. You have the elderly women sitting on the side on their little beach chairs.
Yeah, yeah, the children's playing on the street and people singing on the street. You know, it's very special. You know, it's this highway that was supposed to be built in the old riverbed was never built. So I hope that maybe here in El Cabañal it will happen the same thing, and they recognize that some things it's better not to do modern things and just to be so modern, but just keep what is history and what is tradition, and maybe maybe they're lucky and they get it.
Valencia, at least for now, is Spain's best-kept secret. But the city is undergoing a revolution. It wants to be recognized by the world as a must-see destination.
Valencia is now a hotspot in Spain. It's just starting to leverage on its charms and its resources. No importance was given to these elements in the past. The beaches, the sea, the city and the water are now united.
Although Valencia has so much to offer, self-promotion has never been one of its strong points.
For a long time, it was the capital of anti-tourism. Along the coast of the Mediterranean, all the way to Andalusia, there is a highway. And when you arrived in Valencia, there was a gigantic traffic jam. The sign actually said, Valencia Touristic Center, visit 3 minutes. Valencianos actually didn't believe that their city was interesting. But it's the largest historical center in Spain. And its reconstruction offers so many possibilities. We can have a whole new look on the city. The city is more interesting than ever. It's redefining itself and developing its touristic appeal in a modern way. And focusing on culture, looking towards the future.
Valencianos are beginning to recognize the economic and cultural benefits of welcoming the world. And a growing number of Spaniards are taking advantage of cheap domestic flights for a quick dip in the sea.
People talk about Valencia. They want to see what it is. And there is so much to see. Just look at the old neighborhoods like Cabañal, threatened by gentrification and speculation. It's an urban wonder to look at, a very down-to-earth city. And it's a pleasure to walk these neighborhoods. The tourists love it.
Et je crois que ça, les tourismes différents l'aiment. Et ce sont les valeurs de la ville. Et aussi,
And the beach.
les valeurs
Look at the beach.
géographiques, la plage. Je crois que s'il y a un
There are still many things to discover here in Valencia,
à Valencia,
because
il y
it's
a
so raw and
à
undefined.
découvrir qui ne sont pas trop codifiés, trop.
In a way, it's still the capital of anti-tourism.
Il est encore un peu capitale de l'antitourisme.
In order to chart its future, Valencia's past must be understood. The city, though founded by the Romans, owes much of its development to the Moors. They arrived here in the 7th century from Western Maghreb and laid the foundations of local urban development.
Right now we're in Barrio del Carmen.
This is the Barrio del Carmen. This is the old part of the city. So these are the little windy streets, the little medieval streets which were built on the old Arab streets. The historic center, it's where seats of government are. Valencia was a kingdom in its own right, centuries ago. So there's still a legacy of that time. You still have ministries, you still have palaces, you still have, there's the parliament, all this kind of thing. It's representative of the independent state that Valencia was many years ago, and that's still part of the identity of Valencia today. People hark back to the time when it was a separate country. It wasn't part of this big country called Spain. That's very much part of, obviously, of the Spanish identity. People always talking about the different regions and autonomous communities, as they're called, within Spain. So when you think of Spain, I think you probably think of Andalusia maybe, or Madrid or Barcelona, but Valencia does have a very strong identity, and it's becoming much more well-known as a city outside of Spain. It's always been a little bit of the unloved sister, I think, within the Spanish family. People don't really respect Valencia. I think they look down on Valencia maybe as being a bit nouveau riche or a bit flash or a bit brash. It doesn't have the gravitas maybe of Castile or Madrid. But it is actually an incredibly vibrant city. And when I first came here, you could sense it was a little bit in the doldrums. It was a lot of these buildings that we see around us, they hadn't been done up, they hadn't been painted, they were looking a bit forlorn. And over the past few years, they've done them up, they've painted them, and it's really looking great. And actually, the whole spirit of the city has undergone quite an important change, I think, in the past 10, 12 years. We use the term Moors, really, to talk about anybody within Islamic Spain. People, Visigoths, people, from the Roman times, all kinds of tribes who moved through Spain during the Dark Ages. They settled here. So these are local people who then convert to Islam, end up speaking Arabic because Islam was the superpower of the age. Also, you obviously had a few Arabs, people actually came in with the invasion in 711, and Berbers from North Africa, and then you had Persians, other peoples from the Islamic Empire, so people from Persia, maybe Turks, all kinds of ethnic groups were coming here, Slavs, black Africans, so it was a real melting pot. There were many, many different types of people here. Which is why it's useful to use the term Moor or Moorish, because it kind of envelops pretty much everybody in this, as I say, in this cultural melting pot that was Islamic Spain at that time. We're talking about 900 years of solid Moorish presence of some sort in Spain. It's a very, very long time. And it's very important not only for Spanish history and culture, but for European history and culture as well. I mean, if there would have been no European Renaissance had the Moors not come to Spain. I mean, it's that important. They were just so much more advanced in all kinds of areas that they were able to bring this knowledge to a European environment, and from Spain, it shot up into France, Italy, Britain, all these other European countries. Here you can see something of the remnant of the old Moorish house. Obviously, this is a Christian house. It's built sometime in the 16th century, but you can see an echo of the old Moorish style of house. You've got the sort of big, thick walls, big doors shutting off the outside world, and inside you've got this little center of tranquility, this little garden, the courtyard, the plants, a little calm center for you and your family away from the hubbub and the noise and the stress of the city around you. And if you look up here, you can see these are very much Islamic designs, the octagonal stars. This is not a Christian design. And actually, you can see there it's painted. The paint has still survived there. So this would probably have been built by Moorish artisans. This is one of the interesting things. Muslims who are left behind, Moors who are left behind, once an area being conquered by the Christians, often they're called mudejars or mudejares, and they are, as I say, they're craftsmen, and often they're employed to build churches. So you have this curious situation where Christian buildings are actually being built by Muslim builders and craftsmen. But this is this sort of melting pot that is Spain at that time. That's why it's so interesting. We've got lots of alleyways around this area, and the Carmen, it's a bit of a labyrinth, and you can easily get lost here. But, not all of these streets, some of these streets are where old Moorish streets were, but not all of them. I mean, the city has been remodeled several times over the past few centuries. So you can see here where we're standing now, we would have been right underneath the walls. The walls would have gone straight over us. But nowadays, we've got this house behind us.
In 1609, by the orders of Philip III, the Moors were suddenly expelled, given 3 days to leave the country. But 4 centuries later, the impact of their long occupation is still very present. A hotel developer recently discovered the remains of the fortifications that once protected the Muslim city.
To leave like a testimony of the different sides of the building, right? Because if you are having lunch here, you are in the inner part of the city. Whereas if you are having dinner at the other side of the wall, then you are having dinner outside of Valencia. So when we got the bookings, we always ask, would you like to have dinner within Valencia or outside Valencia? Inside or outside?
The district of Carmen has been abandoned for so long. Are people finding a new interest in restoring the area and guarding the richness of the past?
The tradition in Valencia is so strong that people, to some extent, they want to forget about all that past, which is an agricultural past, and they don't feel fitting in the modern structures, social structures. So what happens? People prefer modern structures, modern stuff, modernity at any price. With the investment of Palau de les Arts, that's 450 buildings like this one. So we could have refurbished the whole ancient quarter of the city with the investment of one new building. So for us, it's much important to keep everything and to try to preserve it and to use it as a tourist interest, much better than the new developments in town.
Architecture is not the only legacy left behind by the Moors. Some of their customs still form part of daily life, including the water tribunal, held on the steps of what is now a cathedral.
It's great how you get that mix. You know? Originally, it was a site of an old pagan temple to goddess Diana. Then it became a church under the Visigothic period. Then it became a mosque under the Moors. And then when the city was conquered by the Christians in the 13th century, they turned it into a cathedral again. And yet what we're going to see here, this is the water tribunal, Tribunal de las Aguas, is actually like a living remnant of the Moorish period, because what they did about 1,000 years ago under the Moors was set up like a legal body to look after all the water channels and stuff in the Huerta, this market gardening area around the city. And this is the continuation of that. It used to meet originally inside the mosque, but when they built the cathedral, they kind of kicked them out of the mosque and said, right, you've got to meet here outside this main door here. But the fact that it takes place on a Thursday is important, because Thursday is like the last working day of the Islamic week. Friday is their day off. And it's happening at 12 o'clock, you know, which is sort of the main moment of the day for a meeting.
So they deal with current issues?
That's right. It's actually the oldest surviving legal body in Europe. So they bring all this and they set up, as I say, this legal body to look after issues to do with, let's say, you know, so-and-so says, you know, hey, this guy has taken my water, but it was my day for watering, and, you know, so little tensions, conflicts, whatever there is, that gets sorted out here. And this, as I say, this legal body has been going for at least 1,000 years, and it's still an active legal body. I mean, their word is final. There's no appeal. There's nothing. You can't change any decision that's made here. The Moors bring all their water knowledge, their knowledge about you know, how to irrigate the land and how to protect water, how to look after water. They bring that with them because they've come from a much drier climate. They have a much better idea than the Europeans do when they arrive here. But also, it's the foods that didn't exist in Europe until the Moorish period, you know, like aubergines, spinach, artichokes, oranges, rice, nutmeg, cumin, all kinds of things like this. They didn't exist in Europe until the Moors came here and they planted all these things around here, around Valencia, in the Huerta. So this is the sort of bread basket.
To show me the singularity of Valencia's agricultural riches, Vicente Tamarit Rius introduces me to horchata, a small delicacy found only here.
Bueno, pues la horchata is a very healthy product. It helps you to get a bit more of energy, especially on the hot days, right? When it's really, really hot. To have a sip of this cold drink helps you to keep on going. Horchata is one of the products that makes Valencia known in Spain. It was originally brought here from Africa by the Arabs when they came. It's only grown on the North Valencia because it needs a very peculiar soil, very loose and sandy.
And this agricultural area is called La Huerta.
Yeah. La Huerta is a name that actually has difficult translation in English. I've been looking for it, and it's market, garden, orchard, vegetable garden. Even in French, they say huerta.
The Huerta of Valencia is one of Europe's most prolific agricultural regions. The Moors expertly irrigated this already fertile land, generating self-sufficiency. The list of things that grow here is impressive. Among them are oranges, tomatoes, almonds, grapes, rice, and chufa, the tuber used to make horchata.
Isn't agriculture the base of the economy of Valencia?
It used to be, but nowadays, because of globalization, it is very difficult to have agriculture as a profitable business anymore, really. And this is one of the problems that we have to keep on all these fields going on, because there are 40 towns in the whole area of the Huerta, right, apart from Valencia, and they obviously grow over the agricultural fields.
So the Huerta is in danger of disappearing?
Totally. And we are struggling for the necessity of developing a law to protect this, because you see, the Albufera is protected, the River Turia, the park of the River Turia is protected, the sea is obviously protected and exploited touristically a lot, but the other characteristic, let's say, landscape of Valencia, which is La Huerta, is in danger of disappear, sadly.
And how far are we from the center of Valencia right now?
We could see Valencia over there in a straight line, probably in 5 kilometers. You step out of a street in the town, and as you step out, you get into a field. I mean, there is no derelict buildings or wasteland between the city and the agricultural fields.
It was so apparent. We left the city and bang, you're in the countryside.
Yeah, right. This is it. Most of the production goes outside Valencia. It goes to Madrid or Barcelona or the Basque Country.
Is there enough left over for the Valencians?
The area is about 2 million inhabitants, and the production that we have here would feed, without any problems, the whole population here.
The richness of this estate reflects the importance that agriculture must have had on the foundation of the city.
Correct, yeah, because the agriculture here it was not only providing the town, there was a lot, but also with the boats. They would export a lot of wine, for example. This was a very important port for exporting wine and other things, like derivative products such as silk. And then in the 19th century it was oranges. The exportation of oranges started something like in the middle of the 19th century. And it grew a lot along the 20th century, becoming the most important producer of oranges in the world. You can irrigate nowadays with tube sprinklers and all this, but the characteristic of water is for 10 centuries, or even more probably, has been irrigated with the water. This is the main channel called Acequia de Moncada. This channel starts in the river about 12 kilometers from here and runs for about 30 kilometers. And every day of the week, there is a part of the Huerta that they have a right to take the water and irrigate their fields. We are in the middle of Chufa's fields, right? This is where the tiger nut is grown. It's under this, inside the soil, because it is a root.
It looks just like plain grass. Nobody would ever know.
It is, as a matter of fact, it's juncia, which is a kind of grass. We clean this a little bit. This is the chufa that produces the nice horchata. It's amazing how humanity has evolved discovering things like this to be edible and nourishing as they are. Such a simple thing, isn't it?
Valencianos are also very attached to the Albufera Nature Reserve, an immense freshwater lagoon separated from the salt water of the sea by a thin strip of land.
The Albufera is probably the greatest lake, the largest lake in Spain. In the 19th century, it was double the size that it is at the present time. But because they're putting a lot of soil and land from the shores, it reduced the size of it. And all this land was covered to grow rice. The rice fields are all over the place, practically in a circumference around the lake. All the shores are actually rice fields, and miles and miles and miles and miles around.
I'm sure many people around the world do not know that they grow rice in Spain.
Probably. We grow some of the best quality rice. Best quality to make paella, basically.
In addition to producing the rice that forms the basis of paella, the paddy fields also purify the water of this unique ecosystem.
Somehow I think this is unique. The situation of the lake is so close to the city, 10 kilometers away, with all this wildlife. Only the authorized fishermen, 2-3 villages around the lake, can actually fish in it. Nobody else can. The fresh water goes into the sea, and eels and certain sort of fish need to come in here when they are alevines, when they are little. They have to live in fresh waters, and when they grow and they mature, then they go back to the sea and migrate. It's a place that gives you a calm and a tranquility that also the air, the smell. There is something in the Albufera that when you come here, you go back home and you sleep really nicely that night.
The wealth of the Albufera greatly contributes to the Valenciano Epicurean lifestyle. World traveler and writer Miles Rodis meets me at the Central Market.
This place is an institution here.
Absolutely. It's been up there for just over 100 years now. We were saying it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest markets in all Spain. Look at these magnificent hams here. This is by no means the only stall that has ham. But aren't they wonderful, hanging there? Let's go straight round to the cheese counter.
Gracias.
You chose very well there.
Apparently, the fishermen have Sunday and Monday off, so Tuesday is the day to come for fish.
You're very well informed, yes. Yes, indeed, absolutely. As you say, the fish couldn't possibly be fresher. Now here, right at the entrance to the market, we have perhaps the only things that are still alive. These are eels. Eels from the Albufera. It's such a pity that television can't impart smell as well as sound, as well as vision.
It seems like you're blessed by the gods. You have all the fresh fruits and vegetables from the huerta.
Yes.
And the fish from the
Yes.
albufera.
What's missing? I think for the perfect meal, you could have fresh vegetables from here, fish from the ocean, fish from the Mediterranean, a glass of wine, surely. Now, the term Valencia applies to the city and also to the region. And the Valencia region actually has some very good wines. Heidi, I was telling you I wanted to show you one or two typical bars in Valencia. Well, this is one that's very atypical, very untypical, if you like.
Yeah, that's right. It's not so easy to find this kind of places.
Well, we seem to have found you very early in the day.
Yeah.
Yes? Yes.
People usually come like a little bit later, like 2, 3,
Yes.
something like that.
Is that a regular lunchtime in Valencia?
Yeah. 2:30 will be like the regular time. Yeah.
The start of lunchtime.
Yeah, the start.
And when's the
And when
end
you
of lunchtime?
Around 4:35.
Do people take siestas?
Well, some people, yeah. Some lucky people, yeah.
Do the Valencianos work very hard?
Yeah, we can say yes.
But I always think of you Valencianos as people who work hard and play equally as hard, probably harder. No?
Maybe. Maybe.
Salud
Salud y pesetas.
y amor y el tiempo para gozarlos.
According to Miles, it's impossible to understand the locals' relationship with food without first eating the traditional paella, the real paella.
La pepica. Hola, buenas tardes, señor. Soy Miles Rodis, soy yo. Sí. Muy bien, va bien. De acuerdo, let's see you.
Wow, Miles, we have our work set out for us.
What I've ordered is a typical Valencian paella, not with the shellfish and seafood that you often get abroad. But here, where paella was invented, or so they claim, and there's every possibility it was, we're going to have the one with rabbit and chicken and maybe a little snail or two.
At what time of day do Valencians eat paella?
That's a very valid question. The simple answer is only at midday. Midday, I mean, it's 10 to 4 and we haven't started yet.
That's Valencian midday.
Exactly, yeah.
So, do the Valencians eat paella on a normal basis, or is it a part of the national folklore?
It's still very, very much a Valencian tradition. I mean, for example, if we look around us here, I don't see a single foreign tourist here. To the extent that I'd almost say that many Valencians would consider paella, quite jealously, would say it's part of our identity, and rather resent it being taken over by the rest of the world.
After 2 lunches and a siesta, what better than the national sport? A tour of the best tapas bars.
8:30 p.m., it's time for tapas.
It is indeed. As you've probably seen, the traffic densities increased quite dramatically now. Now's the time when everyone's heading home, everyone's thinking about what should we do this evening.
You had your siesta?
I am glad to say I had my siesta. I'm feeling more refreshed than many Valencianos will do right now, yeah. So here we are at the entrance of the old town, the great gate in front of us. I think it's about time we ourselves want to join them, no? Okay.
Let's go. So would you say the Valencians are Epicurean?
Yes, I think the Spanish in general are, but the Levantines, the people who live here on the coast, I think particularly so. I think it's evident in the fiestas. It's evident in the way they approach each other and the way they deal with each other, but especially that spirit of levity, of joie de vivre, as we say in English. And of course, it's helped enormously by the climate. You know, in a climate where you can sit outside for 8 months of the year, it's easier to be laid back.
So tell me about the tomatina. What is that all about?
There are several theories about why it began. And even though it's as recent a tradition as that, already the origins are lost. The theory you usually hear is that a few of the local youth just flung a few tomatoes at each other. And since then, every year it escalates and escalates. And this year, they estimate there are at least 40,000. This is a little town with a population of not even 2,000. People come from all over the world.
How many kilos or tons of tomatoes are thrown?
Oof, over 200 tons. Now, these huge lorries drive into town, and the lorries have a team of young men up top who disgorge the tomatoes onto the crowd below, and then for precisely an hour, it's a rocket that starts it off, and then the signal is given, and everything stops, and it's respect. So the tomatina is another extravaganza, an opportunity to have fun. It just finishes in tomato juice running down the streets. But we've had fun, so it's worthwhile. Here, they observe the tapas tradition, but they recreate and evolve. We need to make the difference. Having tapas is a traditional activity, and then there are traditional dishes within the tapas. But this is as traditional as anything else in that it serves tapas. It's the kind of tapas they serve that are different.
It's quite amazing. It's deep-fried camembert with black currant and tomato sauce. It's fantastic.
Because it's so evolutionary, you won't find that in many places in Valencia.
Well, thank you for taking me here.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. Dos copas del vino tinto de la casa. Y uno entero, y le escuchamos. Adelante.
Un entero.
Impresionante. Impresionante, me acuerdo.
Una de pescadito.
But these are something that are very, very typically Valencian. The clochinas are very special Valencian mussels. Because the cultivated macarrones are much bigger and much less tasty.
Una de pescaditos.
Please note
Yes.
the bucket at your feet.
The activity is so rooted in local life that there's even a verb to describe it.
There are two ways of saying it, tapear or ir de tapas. It's essentially, it simply means going from bar to bar to bar.
So it's a part of the Valencian way of enjoying life.
Yeah, absolutely.
If people start going out at this hour, what does it mean for work the next day?
I used to working here full time. I had a team of about 25. I knew for a fact that in the summer, not most of them, the younger ones, would be going out till about 2 in the morning, and they'd still roll up fresh as daisies at 8 o'clock the next morning. Is their metabolism different? Have they been trained since childhood? They probably have, actually. I'm convinced that the Spanish in general, and Valencianos in particular, sleep a lot less than the rest of the world, if you like.
This lifestyle wouldn't work in other cities
In other
of the world.
countries? I don't know. Maybe at the same latitudes, with the same climate. I think climate does have a very real relationship with the lifestyle. Because here we are, it's September. In Northern Europe, it's getting cool. People are putting sweaters on. But here we are, 11:30 at night. We're sitting outside comfortably without a sweater. And we could continue throughout the night and not feel the need to put a sweater on. So there's every incentive to live outside, to live in the street, to live by the beach, if you like. But I suppose they've always done it this way. And if your parents do it this way, and you probably slip into this very agreeable form of life without questioning too much. Why bother with distant philosophical questions? Let's just enjoy.
After the gazpacho, Miles went home. But I just had to stay and watch the bustling city, wondering how Valencia survives on such little sleep. It's nearly 1 in the morning on a Tuesday, and the streets are full.
1 o'clock in the morning.
Is it? So late?
Really?
You call that late?
No, we don't call it late.
You're joking, right?
No, we don't call it late.
Things are starting to pick up now?
Yes, I think everybody's finishing now from dinner. They're having one drink outside, and then we go out to the dancing and to the bars.
And you stay out until what time, approximately?
Until 4 o'clock.
Yeah, it depends on the
Maybe
place.
until 7 o'clock, maybe.
They close the bars at 3, then the discos open up until 7, so it's different times.
You know, when you open up the guidebooks on Valencia, Barrio seems to be like the place to be.
Yes, there is a very popular place. El Carmen is one of the popular places. But now, this season, at summer season, people must go to the port.
With fresh air, with the beach, close by, but not so far away from the city.
So everybody right now that's not here is at the port.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that's where we are going now,
Yes.
when we finish this interview. When we finish the appointment.
Only one drink more. Only one drink more.
With 320 days of sunshine a year and some of the finest beaches in the world, Valencia's desire to break out of its shell and become a tourist mecca seems inevitable. But its true charm lies in its unique blend of Moorish and Spanish culture mixed with a Garden of Eden natural bounty. The result? A culinary experience limited only by the imagination, an unassuming attitude, and a zest for living. This little sister to Madrid and Barcelona is quickly growing up and giving its siblings a run for their money.